Welcome to Beta Talks, Zachary. Welcome. It's so good to have you here. And you are number 10 in this series. I'm glad you could come.
I'm so glad I could make it. Yeah, it's an honor to make it in early on the series.
Yeah, hopefully I will keep on with
this
this.
is a 10 out of 1,000. I mean, this is right at the beginning.
Yeah, right. That's the NI plan, right? Okay, so you want to share your type, your full type, OP type?
Sure. My full type is visual, FM, NITI, sleep, consume, play, blast, last.
Yeah, so we have the exact same grant stack, NIFE, TI, and SE, but you are a jumper, so you are just NITI instead of NIFE, right?
Yes, I like to skip my FE.
Okay, let's start with that. How is it to be a jumper? I mean, have you compared yourself to the regular NF, INFJs and seen any differences, noticed any differences between you and them?
Yeah, I mean, I think it does go straight to the FE. Like it's that big block. And yeah, I think I never, in the past I typed myself as an INTP because I felt just completely disconnected from the INFJ, that type, that all the anecdotes and stereotypes and everything around it. It's like, they're out there blasting, they're out there doing FE, they're out there connecting with people, and I'm just, hiding in my room playing with Legos. So just did not, I see a huge difference basically. And I think it's that tribe connection for sure.
Yeah. Did you think you were an IP in terms of the human need, like a decider as well, or was it mostly the TI that you were seeing?
Yeah, I think it was the TI that I was focusing on the most. And I was very biased in that I was locked on to INTP for a few years, even before coming to OP. And so when I got to OP and learned the 512 spectrum and all the other types, then I essentially just confirmation biased my way. Like I didn't change my type opinion from there. And I really did think I was a decider. So.
Wow. And what about the animal stack? Because you are sleep, consume, play, blast, you said. So
yeah, so I typed myself consume, sleep, play. So I had my animal stack correct. Just the human needs were not quite on.
Yeah, it was really good though, I think.
Yeah, I did well. I didn't have too many things to process.
Yeah. What about the visual part? Did you see that as well?
I typed myself double feminine, so I did not see the masculine D. And they said that when I got my typing back, they said, well, of course you would see yourself as double feminine because your identity is movable and you're seeing your TI and you're seeing that it's movable. So you're seeing the double feminine energy. So I'm in double feminine on my saviors or on my double activated animal. So I do have a lot of that energy, but according to how the modalities are set up, I'm visual.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I could see the visuals. Like I could definitely, seeing things like, they talk about synesthesia. If I imagine words or numbers or days of the week, they all have colors for me. Wow. I don't notice that as much now as I did like as a kid, but basically everything has a visual version in my brain.
Okay, so what color is the number 8?
Purple.
Purple. And number 4?
It's also kind of purple, but it's like more of a blue, like a dark blue.
Cool. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of synesthesia, but I really can't relate to that at all.
Yeah.
So how does that like play out in your head? Do you connect everything to colors? Is that how you remember? Connected to your memory as well, or?
I've tried it. I don't think I've found it to be super useful in practice. Sometimes I'll organize like days of the week into their own colors or numbers, but I don't think it's actually it's something I notice for sure, but it's not a big part of the rest of my life, I think.
Interesting. Wow. Okay, so the FE, so the masculine tribe, is in a demon state then. So you have the play and the blast last, and that's where your FE is is. So how would you describe your masculine FE? Can you see it?
I can always see it, and that plays out in some important ways. I think the important thing is to understand the savior demon distinction, because that's the big one, right?
Mm.
And it's a demon. That means that I feel like I'm not allowed to use it, or at least I'm not allowed to use it until I've exhausted the TI first. And that's where it comes out in the activations. Like the TI is activated. Okay, I'm always going for the TI for everything.
Mm.
And when that completely fails, I'm like, I don't even, it feels almost impossible to feel okay to use the FE.
Yeah.
But it's always there as a sort of perception almost. And the decider functions are about decisions, but they still have a kind of, I think there's kind of a perception to them as well, that component. So when I'm out with people and I'm in the situations where you would use FE, I can see it. And I would describe that as like, I can see the social values and I can see the norms, that I can see that they're there. I don't actually, because I'm not exercising the function very much, I don't know how to use it. I just know that I know there are tribe values, basically. I know there is an energy in the room. I just don't know how to do anything about it. And what that means is that for most of my life, it's been like, I'm always nervous in those scenarios because I'm always nervous that I'm going to use the function, use it wrong. And usually that's like, oh, let's play. Like, what if I'm offensive? And I mean, the truth is that sometimes you are going to be offensive. Everybody is. And so the 2 or 3 times that I've let that happen in my life, it's like, oh, that was terrible. That was so bad. Because nothing really bad happened, but I got talked down just a little bit. I did something offensive or something didn't connect. Not even offensive. Just I used the FE and it didn't work perfectly. And it's like, okay, now from now on in those scenarios, I'm aware of that dynamic, and I'm just gonna stay chill. I'm not gonna do anything. I'm not gonna do any FE. I'm just gonna exist.
Right.
And that dynamic creates then I just want to, my response to that is I want to only be in very predictable scenarios. And a lot of the time I just want to be alone, because that's when I'm able to do the TI. But I don't feel like I can do the TI in the social setting.
Oh, that's interesting. So yeah, to break that down a little bit, the first part is that you are scared of wrecking the vibe, you could say, somehow. Yes. So we are both intuitives and we are talking a lot of abstract talk now. Could you give any sensory examples of what that could look like in a social context?
Yeah, let me try that. Okay. It's probably going to still stay somewhat abstract, but I'll try to make it more specific than just wrecking the vibe.
Yeah.
You're hanging out with your friends or you're hanging out with family. Just imagine some social group. Let's say some friends that are my friends and also some of their friends as well. And I just want to, there's certain topics that you don't bring up or that you do bring up, or there's a conversation happening and like the conversation builds on itself, right? You build up a topic and eventually that topic changes, and that's how a conversation usually goes. And to interact with that, just interact with the conversation, you add things that are fitting the vibe of that conversation. It might be the same topic. Oh, we're talking about cars. So I bring up my own experience or my own opinion about cars or that car, and you develop a conversation somehow that way. But you don't just change to another topic. Like everything you say in a conversation has to address what is already being said in some way and connect to it.
At least when you are OI, I would like to add.
Sure. And there's going to be channel changing that happens, but even the channel changing has to build on or move with. You can't ignore what's being, basically you can't, if you're interacting with other people, you can't ignore what's already happening.
Right.
In that environment.
So the whole adjusting part, like following this vibe thing and what the tribe is interested in and the topic and so on.
Yeah, so like when I go out to dinner, I go to a party, rare occasions, of course, and it's like I'm going in and I'm going in and trying to see what other people are doing, what kind of energy they are creating, what kind of topics, what kind of mood of those topics, like how serious is the conversation, how silly is it.
Yeah.
I'm watching that, trying to see it, and then trying to find in myself something to contribute to
Right.
that conversation.
It sounds very analytic, like.
Yeah, well, talking about it in a very analytic way. I don't think I'm analyzing it quite as much actually doing it, but that's my
Yeah.
description of it. Yeah, what's
Right.
happening. Yeah.
Interesting. So you're using a lot of your TI to kind of, yeah, understand what's going on, and from there decide how to jump into the social activity or the
Yeah, and I think
conversation.
in practice, it's still somewhat more intuitive for me. I'm not necessarily very aware of that process, but the point of all that is that I'm using the FE. I'm aware of the FE because I'm aware that there is a vibe that I want to respect. But most of the time, I just hang back and just stay and consume.
Yeah.
Because I don't actually think what I have to say will contribute.
Right. I understand. Which is probably wrong.
Yeah.
According to my masculine TI, I always try to encourage the consume and the sleep saviors to talk more, because I find what they have to say very interesting, since it's processed already, and yeah, it's broader, so I learn a lot from them. But I recognize they all say the same. It's like they are never ready to speak
Never
or
ready to talk.
share. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a good example of this would be my freshman seminar. It was the first time I was like in a group of people. Okay, we're all there to actually talk about, the book that we read that week, or the whatever we're, it's an English seminar. And I learned I was of course terrified, because like, oh, I have to speak, like there's this rule, like I'm graded on participation, so I'm going to have to speak. And it was very good as a growth opportunity, but I was afraid of it. But what you said is, you're right, that the idea, the thought in my head that I'm not allowed to speak, or what I had to say won't contribute, is most of the time it's a lie. And I was able to pay attention to that because throughout the year, like I wasn't talking the most, I wasn't talking the least. I made myself talk sometimes and participate. And pretty much anytime I did, it did not feel good. It did not feel valid. It did not feel like I was contributing. And also, most of the time, there wasn't a whole lot of response to what I said.
Right.
And with some distance from that, I can see, I think probably I just said something that made people think, and they didn't know how to respond to immediately. But also, like in private, when I got feedback from people and even the professor, they all thought, oh yeah, you talk enough. And also, when you say something, it's clear, it's obvious that you've thought it through. And I needed that feedback, because I had no idea that what I said in a conversation was perceived that way, or perceived that deeply.
Exactly.
And so like that's something I'm still constantly fighting, is like, I know from experience and from talking to people that I have an impact in a conversation when I say things, when I speak up, most of the time. And I have to kind of balance that out with the lies that's still in my head. That what I'm saying doesn't mean anything, or it's at best it's meaningless, and at worst it's annoying and disruptive.
Exactly. Trying to remember those past experiences and that feedback that you got earlier, and that you actually did contribute. So why wouldn't you this time?
Right.
Yeah.
It's just, I remembered something, I forgot it, but it'll come back. It's just knowing I have to go into all situations now, even like this interview, and I know to expect how it will feel. I know to expect that it probably won't feel good to blast still. And I'm okay with that. I'm ready for it.
Good. Wow, you're doing your demons right now. Let's drink to that.
Well, the more that I can connect with the FE itself, the more it goes better for me, because I understand how my blasting works. Because when it's a demon and you start out just outsourcing it, and then you go to like copying other people. It's like, okay, I don't know how to blast. I'm seeing people blast. Okay, let me try to do it that way. And that's like it's always a little bit different for everyone.
Yeah.
And that sort of then leads me into my blast is better the more that I'm okay with the emotions, because the FE, because that's the function I am supposed to use, the blast. Like that's just how it works for me. So the more that I'm not afraid of the emotions, the more that I can be aware of my own like connection to the feeling function, to the more I'm connected to how I feel, the better that I can blast.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It will be more organic and more natural and
It'll be more authentic
relaxed.
and more meaningful, and it will show in what I say.
Right.
Basically, what I'm trying to say is it's better when it comes from the heart.
Yeah, it is. And I guess that's also the thing with NF blast. Like that is the kind of blast that is speaking from the heart, motivating the crowds and yeah, inspiring. And that's kind of hard to do when you are not in a good place with your feelings. So yeah, what you're saying,
At least you have to be aware of them. You have to be, because that's about like being connected to yourself. And then I can come out with that.
So our blast is intuitive and feeling. So it's kind of very, yeah, soft.
Wishy-washy.
Yeah, right. And I have,
down.
Yeah, it is. It's very hard to pin down. I had a hard time seeing myself as blast first, actually, because I didn't really understand what NF blast was. I think I thought blast was basically ST blast. That was what I was
Yeah, it's because it's tangible.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So if we compare our two blasts, so you are double masculine and I have a double feminine blast. And I was thinking of, for example, Shan from the objective personality. She also has blast last, but also double masculine.
Yes.
However, it's NIT instead of NF. But can you relate to that that masculine demon blast state that you can see in her?
Yes, absolutely. And the more that I work on and go forward in my journey and learn how to blast better, the more that I relate to Shan when I see her on video.
So in what way do you relate to her? Like,
it's the biggest one that I notice is it's always serious. When the blast is good for us, it has to be serious. I feel like for us to do it really well, because it's a demon, it's because it's so hard. So we have to get through all the processing to get to the blast.
Yeah.
And I think the masculine energy adds some more seriousness on top of that. I think masculine energy is just more like shoving more serious already. Like at least that's how it comes off.
Yeah.
On the outside.
Is it more goal oriented, like more directed then, would you say, when you say serious?
Yeah, I think that might be one way to look at it. I think there's more processing to do there. I think when I see Shan blast, it's just always gives me it always seems serious, like face, emotions, like it's serious. You know, it might be seriously sad or seriously angry or it might even be seriously happy, but it's not casual. Like I can't blast and be casual about it the way that like Dave does, you know?
Yeah.
And that's where it's like I sometimes envy, because I sort of want to be able to blast a little bit more freely. And I think that will happen with time.
Yeah.
But you know, at least in this space, it's going to be more serious. And I guess it helps to go into like, can we go into like explaining why maybe that would be. I talked about the saviors. The savior demon energy is mostly about I'm allowed versus I'm not allowed. The modalities, it's a whole different thing. And I've been thinking about the last few days about what that is, like what are the modalities? And I see it as it's just how do you treat the outside world? What do you consider solid and what do you consider movable? So for me, it's I consider the patterns and other people as solid. But blast is about moving other people. So if I'm going to blast, which I don't want to because it's a demon, but if I'm going to blast, I better do it. I better shove, because it's going to take a shove to move other people if other people are solid. And so I think that's where it gets more serious too. It's more there's more power in being more serious.
Yeah.
Because if you're being silly, like being like a jester, like Joker energy is like, yeah, he like moving around people,
Yeah.
like because they're treating the other people as solid, as not the other people as solid. It gets really confusing quickly.
Yeah, it's like
But
for me, I am masculine DI, so masculine TI, so I am the solid one,
yeah,
right?
right. And I don't see myself as solid, so I've got to, if I'm going to go from like this very movable self, this inside, and then move the outside world, it seems like impossible, but I have to position myself into a state where I'm serious, where I'm connecting in that. I feel like I'm not making this more clear with more words, but
no, but I think
but I'm also doing
you.
it right now, right? Like I'm doing the masculine blast. I feel that like, oh, I need to push this explanation. I need to push this understanding or this energy. I gotta like, and that's the visual part of it too in my hands. But
yeah, right.
But that's again like kind of taking it back. Like, yeah, I relate to Shan in that way. Like if I'm gonna blast, it's got to be serious.
Yeah, her blast is very serious to me, and yeah, that kind of blast, the masculine, is kind of charged, I would say.
It's charged, yeah.
And to me, as Savior Effie, I'm like, ooh, whoa.
It comes off strong, right?
Yeah, that's my reaction, like animalistically.
Yeah, I think you're all the, if you get to your, because it's blast, like I said, you have to do all the processing. I think it's part of it is like all the functions are firing at that point. There's nothing being left out. It's not blast on its, I can't blast just blast. No. I'm blasting my consume and like my sleep consume. It's all coming together.
Yeah.
And I noticed with the Shan, like if Shan blasts, she has her FI is in there. Like it's very authentic. It's very her whole self. And
yeah,
for me, it's not, I'm doing the NF. So it's not, I'm not trying to teach about how things work. I'd really like to, I feel like I'm not doing it right now, but I feel like where I'm going, the trajectory of me blasting well is getting to a place where I am moving the vibe, I'm moving the emotions of other people in a constructive way.
Right.
Ideally.
Yeah.
And that's the emotions are external somehow. That's another level I haven't gotten to, but I notice that when a lot of times, even now, when I get feedback from people, they do tell me that their emotions are moved in some way, or or they at least got a vibe, and it's like, oh, like I'm still not super aware of that. I'm just kind of trusting the process and trying to practice more.
Yeah. So again, then, if we tie this to some sort of example so that it will be easier for people to understand, do you have like any experiences? You mentioned feedback. What were the situations when you were blasting and moving emotions?
So hard to pull out the sensor, but okay, there's one that I do have that I have processed. This is not a serious example actually, so I don't know if it even counts as blast. I think it does.
Let's try it.
Yeah. Okay. So this is a while ago actually. It was like I randomly accidentally blasted it. So I was walking down the street at night with a group of friends, and we walk past a house, and they're like making fun of the house or the yard or something. And I guess it's nighttime. I said, well, you got to be careful about what you're saying, because the people in the house are deaf and they can read lips, so might be able to like actually hear you from here, across from the house.
Wow,
and
you knew that.
I said that, and they all kind of freaked out a bit. And I was like, no, I'm just joking. It's just not actually. But I was so surprised, like I was able to like affect the group of people because I said it so authentic. I said it so seriously.
Right. Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that one stuck with me because it was so unexpected to have to like control a group of people. Say something and it has just say something and it impacts them.
Interesting.
And I remember another smaller example would be also a long time ago, also accidental, is I just said to one of my friends, like, there's always a song playing in your head, like all the time, even if you're not aware of it. And then like later he just told me like that he just kept thinking about that. And he realized there was always a song playing in his head. I was like, and that was another case where I was surprised, like, oh, like you thought about what I said and it impacted how you feel or think.
Right. And where did you get that from? Do you feel that way?
Oh yeah, I feel that way. I just noticed it was something I processed in myself. I was like, there's always a song playing in my head. If I know that, and I like, that's the NF, right? I just once I believe that it's true, then I can like, wait, is there? And I like think about it, go inside my head, and it's like, oh yeah, there is.
Right. That's a personal pattern that you have tracked
Yes.
in yourself. Like there is
Yes.
always a song going on in your head, and then using that pattern and
Yes.
yeah, giving it to the tribe.
I think the important thing when it comes to blast is that the words have impact. So which means that it's partly the processing, but the blast itself is about, I said it in a way that is straightforward and clear. And then it's
Yeah.
able to be consumed easily by someone else and then internalized and processed in a meaningful way. Like that's, and I think that you can see that with the example. It's just a one sentence, but I think there's a lot going on there that's hard to really analyze. But you say words, usually, like that's where I see going with blast is I still use a lot of words when I explain something.
Mm-hmm.
I see that with all the TIs, actually. They use a lot of words, but I think the better that I get at blast, as I get better at blast, it will show in how I use less words.
Ah, yeah, because blast is actually directing. It's not really talking. So you can do that in many ways.
Yes. Yeah, you can talk in many ways. Sleep likes to just talk and talk, because sleep is talking for me. It's I'm processing myself, which means I need to use as many words as I need to, because the priority is to sort out all the stuff that's happening in my head. That's sleep talking. But blast is just about saying things that can be consumed easily. Blasting is speaking for other consumes. So the less words I use, the easier it is to do that.
Yeah, that makes me think of when I want to be clear with people, like when it's really important for them to listen, I will kind of cut the message in pieces, and I will just give them like a piece at the time, so that this part sinks in. Then I can add the next part, and
It's
then
digestible.
Yeah.
And that's really hard for me, because again, what happens because the blast doesn't feel like I'm allowed to just deliver a message, but it does feel like I'm allowed to have my identity. And it seems like the way that comes out is, and I see that with the other DIs, the other TIs again, especially with blast, is I have to give context for everything. I have to give you my whole identity, because the important thing is not for you to take a message from me, but for you to understand me and where I'm coming from, and so that I'm, like it makes me valid or accepted somehow.
Significant.
And it's hard to believe that you would accept me if you didn't, or that you would connect with me in the way that I want to, if you don't have all the context, if you don't understand me and all the complicated pieces that I've put together in my sleep consume.
Right. And that is when you are giving your sleep dump more.
Yeah. And I think that's the default too.
Yeah.
For me. Yeah.
Because you're sleep first. Yeah, let's jump to that then, because you're sleep over consume, same as me.
Yes.
And I was thinking about that. I have been reflecting quite a bit about it in my own case, because we have this obligation to build with the sleep. So make sense of it. And we have to do that before we add more, consume more information. So that would mean that our consume is slower if we compare to the ones who are consume over sleep, right?
That's right. I think you're talking about being very selective about everything you take in.
Not necessarily selective, more like obligated to process everything that comes in and build with that before you take in more.
It's a thorough process. Everything is thoroughly processed, which is kind of slow.
Yeah. And optimally, you want to make the pieces fit, like the old information with the new. So,
especially the TI, because everything has to fit. It has to fit logically too. It's got to fit with every piece has to fit with every other piece.
Exactly.
I love to talk about Legos, because I've always connected really well with Legos. I think there's this sort of sensory to abstract connection there, where it shows how TI works, and then it's just on the back end. It's unsurprising that I like it so much, because with Lego, every piece fits with every other piece. Everything is it's all logically connected. Because there's that, I guess, in the sensory too. But yeah, that's how the TI feels. It's like Legos, or that's how I'm trying to make everything.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And do you feel, because you're savior consume and I'm consume last, um, but still, because your sleep is over your consume, do you feel that your consume may be slower than other consume saviors? Have you compared? Can you see any patterns?
I think, I don't know if the animal itself, that process is slower, but it is more limited for sure, because the OE, it's like, oh, my OE is double activated because I have double activated consume, but I'm not doing OE like anything like the lead OEs,
Right.
because
Yeah.
I'm all, everything I take in when I go to consume, it's usually this, it's always the same places. Sometimes it's the same information. Now, as much as I can, it's new information, but it's like one step to the right.
Mm,
I use YouTube a lot for taking things in, and
yeah.
YouTube plays really well to that because it shows you the same channels
Yeah.
or the same or related channels or related videos for
Mhm.
whatever you're consuming. That works perfect. That kind of algorithm works perfectly for me because I don't want anything too new. I want
Mm,
something that's like, I know what that is already, but it has just slightly something new. That's where I
yeah.
end up usually following the same channels, the same music artists, and
Mhm.
I prefer TV shows over to movies because when you watch, once you get into a TV show, there's always a new episode. I want to always watch the new episode. I don't rewatch TV shows usually,
Mhm.
but I know what to expect because I already know these characters.
Oh, yeah. Interesting. Wow. So talking about consume, how did you discover OP then?
I remember my friends got me to take a personality test a long time ago. I thought it was stupid and
Mhm.
was okay, type me as an introvert and this other stuff. It's like, okay, I knew that already.
Yeah.
And then some years later, I got into MBTI
Mhm.
fully. And something I took, it was again, I guess the pattern of consume for me when it's actually something new that I'm not, it's a whole new area that I'm not into.
Mhm.
Um, First of all, it's usually another person that kind of forces me to, or like not forces me, like is insists, they insist that I take it in. So
Yeah.
they probably send me directly to something. It's the same case for music. And then when I take it in, they I get thoughtful recommendations, and it's some part of it is like, oh, that's something I care about, or it's something I know already. It's like something I care about. It's like I'm always building something, and then you show me something. It's like, wait, that's that's actually like MBTI. It's like, oh, I've been thinking a little bit about how there are patterns, and there's a way that I work, and there's ways that other people work. I remember the pattern, the NI for me before MBTI was, I see that lots of people are very similar
Mhm.
and lots of people are very different. So there's this like, it's not like everyone's a little bit different. Everyone's a special snowflake. There's are like these, why are some people
Clumps.
so similar and
Yeah.
so different?
Mhm.
And so when I got into the MBTI, it's like, oh, this is a system. Like this is what I'm trying to do already. Um, and once I realized that, then I was like, okay, I'm all in, and
Yeah.
I'm going to consume everything about MBTI. But at the beginning, it was I'm going to consume everything about MBTI on this one website.
Oh no.
And so I did that for
I hope it was a good one.
it was
Okay.
16personalities.com.
Oh, yeah.
The most colorful one, the one that comes up first.
Mhm.
And it was the one I was linked to, I think, the first time. I think
Yeah.
I spent a month only learning from that website. And
Right.
then it was like, okay, and eventually I'm like, okay, I have kind of processed everything here. Also, I'm starting to realize, oh, there's this whole just what feels like a chasm of like, just there's so much, like there's this whole internet of MBTI. There's all these
Yeah.
things. And then it was like, okay, there's the Reddit. So I
Mhm.
think I was on the Reddit, just the Reddit for a couple months.
Wow.
And then slowly it's like, okay, there's these YouTube channels. Okay, let me start following these YouTube channels. And Dave Superpowers was one of the first ones that came
Mm.
up. It was like, I think somebody made a post of all the MBTI YouTube channels they knew. And so from
Oh.
there, the consume started getting more broad. I started just taking in anything about MBTI, but it's like I still want to use as few sources as I can. I want to
Mhm.
take in a lot. I want to do a lot of consume, and I want to do it quickly, but I
Yeah.
don't want to do any more new than I need to get that new information.
Mm.
I don't want to go to new places, new sources, because then I have to, I don't know, consider it's more to think about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so consuming a lot in the same places and
Yes.
similar topics or similar areas. Sounds very sleep consume. I was thinking of what Dave has said at some point, that he kind of rewatches the same video over and over again, like hundreds of times, even if it's something important that he wants to learn. Can you
Sure.
relate to that?
Yeah, I think I differ from Dave. You know, there are cases where, so I learned, I took like 3 months of piano so that I could learn, because there's this one cover that I wanted to play, and it was way above my level. It was like someone who had years of experience, they did the cover, but
Yeah.
they made a video, a playthrough video of it. And I couldn't read notes. I just knew the very like bare bones basics.
Yeah.
And I spent 6 months watching that video over and over and playing each part of the song. And I think that was a really good like example of my type, because it's like, I'm being an IJ, really, like, I'm gonna do this thing. I'm gonna, like, who would do this? You know, who would, let's watch this. First of all, I'm listening to the original song and I'm listening to the cover and I'm watching the tutorial version of the cover, just like over and over. And that was like one example of doing it, of watching something hundreds of times in order to then, you know, then use it.
That's called refining as well, narrowing down and all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. I see your piano there in the background as well.
Yes.
Is it a digital?
Yeah, it's a really nice one too. My family got it several years ago. I guess the piano example is more just IJ thing. You know, I'm just doing it for myself. So it's a very good sleep activity.
Yeah.
But I think the consuming as an IJ comes out more when it's a hobby. It's something like MBTI, because there's a lot of information. There's a lot to take in, and so there is a lot of consume happening. I'm just consuming like an IJ. So I'm just consuming enough to keep processing more.
Yeah.
But I'm processing, I'm doing it for the understandings. Like, that's the important thing. I want to take in, and the priority is I want to take in as much new as I need to grow the understanding in myself and make more blocks fit. I'm still not sharing. No. I'm sharing now after 4 years. I'm here doing interviews. I'm like, yes, actually, maybe I will talk about this and my understandings a little bit. Yeah,
right. Because your first need is to understand things.
And if I don't understand it perfectly, I'm not allowed to try to explain it, because someone else is more qualified to explain it.
Right. Yes. Which isn't really necessarily true, but they will have the confidence to do it because maybe they are blast oversleep. So
they will have practice. Yeah, you'll have practice how to explain it. Because that's something that's so hard to own. It's like, okay, I see that I'm demon blast and I want to grow into a more full person and do this thing, or or I have a goal that requires that I blast. Okay, I'll blast. And it's like, that's super hard to get to that point. And it's like, oh, this is a whole skill on its own. And I really thought that if I just did all the consume and I knew the subject perfectly, that I would be able to blast it really well. And that's a little bit true, but it's only like half the story. The other half of the story is that teaching and explaining and talking in a way that makes sense to other people is a whole skill that you practice separately. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's really interesting, because just comparing your first animal to my first animal, it's just the opposite. So I have blast over sleep. So I will kind of learn by blasting, like going over what I already know and talking it out, or, you know, using it somehow in practice. And then from there, I have to correct and re-understand things and refine. You start imperfectly. Like, that's the hardest thing to accept as a blaster. Is like, you're going to be, when you put things into practice, whether it's making something or speaking, it's messy. Like, and there's this process of refinement that you just keep going through all the different animals, the different ways, the different processes. Like, they all work together. And I'd actually also learn more from blasting too. And like, that's another reason, like, if you're savior consume, and you have to understand that you're not going to know as much, you're not going to process things as well if you don't also implement them or teach about them. And that's what I've learned from doing more blast more recently. It's like, oh, I'm talking to people, I'm still learning more about, like, I thought I knew everything about type because I did all the consume. Like, no, I'm still learning more from doing the blast play as well, because it's just a different way to learn. and your animal order is just about which one are you doing first. It
Mm,
doesn't, in some ways, it's kind of arbitrary. You get a different result
mm,
from the different order, but at the end of the day, ideally, you do all of the animals.
yeah. And your blast last, so your consume is double activated, and for me it's vice versa. So I'm double activated on blast, but we're both energy DOMs. And can you see that somehow playing out in your life, like
Like being an energy dom.
yeah, like saving energy, not
Oh, so much.
expending it. Yeah.
Yeah, and pretty early in the class, I don't know how much they do this now, but Dave and Shannon would have the Q&As about like about systems, like how do you systematize your life.
Mm-hmm.
That was that stuff I locked onto even more than type. In fact, for not that far into the class, I still have like periods of like I get bored of the type because I
Mm-hmm.
get too much, it's too much information. Like
Yeah.
I only want as much information as seems useful. Now
For
being super consume, I end up taking a lot more information in than I actually use. But in my head, it's still my approach is still that I only want something that if I think it will be useful. And by useful, I mean useful for expending or saving energy.
mm,
And so I got super into like systems and like being smarter, having more information about like just, keeping track of my schedule and my to-do list and my
mm,
chores and my meals and like having those things more in order. I think I kind of I got more into the informational side of that stuff so that I could be more efficient about it.
yeah. Right.
I
I'm
see
just.
I see that at college too. I think
Mm-hmm.
college is like school is very infodom in the sense that
Mm-hmm.
you're supposed to take a lot of in and you take all the facts in and then you blast them back out onto
Right.
the
Yeah.
test or the paper.
Yeah.
And I don't like it.
How does
It's
that
too many.
work?
How does it work for me? Like my
Yeah.
dynamic?
Uh-huh.
I mean,
How do you
the fact is
handle?
that there's a whole energy game too. So
Mm-hmm.
what I do is I just overwork the energy game in order to have more room to act like it, to pretend to be an infodom. I
So
think some of
what's the energy game then, if you would break it down?
yeah. Okay, so like I'm at college. I have okay, it's Monday. I have 3 classes. Tuesday, I have 2 classes. I got this many homeworks due on this day and that day.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the idea is that I always know that I have a limited amount of energy to expend to do all these things, all my chores, all my work, and also maybe see people. I'm just always thinking about, okay, I have to expend my energy carefully at the
Mm-hmm.
in the right amount to get everything done before I crash or I get grouchy or I can't do it anymore. Like
Yeah.
and especially if I am going to have to blast or do something more difficult like my demons, like
Mm-hmm.
that's going to be more energy. So I'm also factoring that in.
Yeah.
I also it's like it's energy and it's also time. It's like, okay, I'm very aware that the time is going by so fast and I only I am doing the classes and homework, but I also got to make food and
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking about that all the
Yeah.
time. That's the energy game. And so then
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking about how to do that better, how to save energy, make less decisions. That's where you hear people talk about like, eliminate, automate, delegate. Like
Yeah.
that's the energy game strategy.
Right. Yeah. 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 Also the whole work smarter, not harder thing, that
Yes,
concept.
exactly. And at college, it's like, okay, theoretically your main goal is learning all these subjects and stuff. And it's
Mm.
like, okay, that's not the thing I'm thinking about as much. And or at least I find that the consume part is easy, so that's fine, but then the blast part is hard. So it's like I'm thinking a lot about how I need to allocate a lot of energy and have a lot of energy left over to be able to do the information thing, to do all the blasting that I need to,
Mm-hmm.
which is going to be not fun. But
Yeah.
if I've made all my meals already, if I've just taken care, if everything's in order,
Yeah.
I can create excess energy and I can find a way to get through the information too.
Do you then find that you procrastinate because it's so tough to blast to actually get the information out there? For example, if you're going to write an essay or something, you
Yeah,
do.
I think, I mean, you know, everyone procrastinates. So the question is it happening a little bit different at all differently for me? I think in some ways I do procrastinate. Well, say, okay, everyone procrastinates.
Yeah, I think so too.
When I go to write a paper or study for a test, I go too slow because I might be, I might be a great student, like theoretically, but you have to move fast with college. Like you have assignments every day or every week, you know, depending on the class, and you have a limited time. You have timelines. You got to keep moving. And I always want to spend. I never want to be done, basically, because again, I'm never ready to blast. I'm never ready to write the paper or finish the paper. So it's always like everything's always in progress.
Yeah.
And that's why it works so well for me, because okay, I'm willing to do it. I'm willing to play the game. All I have to do is set timers and give myself limited amount of time, not just for finishing the assignment, but for finishing each step of the assignment.
Yeah, to accomplish, to fulfill the whole thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Keep moving. And that's true for lots of other things in my life. You know, okay, I have like 20 things on my to-do list today. Well, I better not spend more than 20 minutes on each one of them, or whatever the math comes out to.
Seems so organized to me. Like that's a part that I find is hard, even though I'm an IJ as well. Like the organizing, time management, as you say. I don't know if it plays in that you are masculine NI and I have feminine NI, but the organizing part is kind of, yeah, it's hard. I lose track of time, even though I have masculine SE at the bottom. Yeah, when I space out, when I go into my sleep processing, time will just fly, you know?
Yes. I think that's being an INFJ, and it's like your default is just to be in the NF kind of, or be in the sleep energy as well.
Yeah.
Not be in the, like, as opposed to like someone who Savior Play, like they're going, like they're doing outside world things, and so they're moving.
Yeah.
So it's different.
It's interesting. I do the outside stuff as well because I'm blast first. So I'm very aware of my need to be, you know, interacting with the tribe. That's important. It's also necessary. It's like the first need I have. So it's a constant push and pull for me because it's one extroverted animal and one introverted. So it doesn't really make sense. It's like I'm fighting with myself all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it seems like every type has some contradiction somewhere, and it's when you try to work it, when you try to understand it, you have the type. The type gives you it gives you a context, gives you reference points for the contradiction that's happening. But the contradiction is still there, and it's a weird. I found it weird to sort that out.
What do you think is your contradiction then? Because at least you have two mopey animals at the top, so they make sense.
Yeah, so I'm definitely an introvert. That's easy to figure out. It's like, okay, I'm just so all in on the introverted energy.
Yeah.
The contradiction for me is more subtle. It feels the masculine FE second feels like a contradiction, because sometimes I feel a little bit like an EJ, but I'm really not. I'm really not an EJ, but it's like that energy is there.
Wanting to push on the tribe.
Yes. Yeah. And like to add a little bit to add one more layer to talking about that function that we did earlier, it feels like in a social situation, it feels like I can't use the TI or the FE. Because the TI it's movable, and I don't really, it's personal. I don't really want it to be moved. I don't want it to be moved if there's any like risk of that. I can talk about type here. This is a type space. It's a safe space. But in a just generic, in a normal social setting, like the TI is not, I don't really want to shove it because it's just mine. And also it's probably not that cool. It's probably, it's probably it's probably something super nerdy. So there's that. But then I don't want to use the FE because it's a demon. So that's the contradiction there. I don't want to use either decider.
That sucks as a double decider, because it should be the strongest, like the middle function should be your strongest. And yeah.
that feels like a contradiction too. Now, when it comes down to it, I'm still having an easier time than the IP. I'm not, because what's happening is not that I'm getting stuck in one or the other. I'm just getting stuck constantly between the two because I don't want to do either one. And I think that's just another version of what Blast lasts. Like I don't want to go do things. I just want to exist, and you know,
Yeah,
I
right.
want to exist without a body and without. I just want to take in, be a fly. I want to be a fly on the wall, basically.
Yeah, like the Matrix thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, this is so interesting. I wanted to ask you also back to the consume, because it's double feminine. So mine is double masculine. It's kind of aggressive in a demon state. But how would you describe yours? You
And
have,
consume.
yeah, feminine and savior state. Like,
Yeah. I
yeah.
mean, that's just normal for me, right? I think most of the time it's like I'm very agreeable. Like that's just my normal state. I'm easy to get along with. I get along with everyone. There's other things happening there, but when we're
How
talking
does
about
that
consume,
connect to the consume? Yeah.
right? Okay, so for information, it's like, I mean, it's easy for me to listen to people. I'll take anything in. I'm like, just give it to me. I'm like, I'm good. Like,
Yeah.
it's not. And then when it comes to college, again, like learning, you know, I've heard like even the savior consumes who are masculine consume, they talk about how hard it is to do the consume, like in college, like they, or the way that they do it is different from me, where like they're very thorough, like they need,
Yes.
they need like, oh, I have this book. Oh, I also need to look up the author, and I also need to get another opinion about it. And it's like, I need a lot to be able to do the consume and move through that. And to, because consume is like, you have to really internalize it. It's because consume is very DI still. For me, I don't feel that way. It feels a lot easier. I would still do better. My blast would be easier if I actually do the consume that same way, but I don't feel a need to just to do it at all. You know, you tell me something, I read a book, it's like, okay, I'm good, I got it. And because it's serving, it feels like it's because it's serving the masculine and it's like, I only need a little bit. I think my explanation of modalities earlier plays into this. If the consume is solid, if I could see the DI, if I saw the DI and SE as the OE and DI as solid, it's going to take a lot of gathering to move the identity, to make that process move, to get it going. For me, it's not. I don't see my identity or the gathering as solid. So I'm just it's just kind of like in a more accepting state all the time.
Yeah.
I'm always ready to listen. I'm ready to take in and work with that and then go from there.
Do you find that you are more movable than with your logic, like more TE style, because it's feminine?
I don't think it was TE because it still feels, because first of all, because it's so personal. And that goes back to what I was saying, like I don't want to do TI with people if I don't feel really safe about it.
Yeah.
Because it's my identity. Like I have a lot, I feel like my emotions are attached to it because it's it's personal, it's emotional. And it's meticulous because it's not, like, TE is just like messing around with like ideas. It's just like whatever.
Yeah.
It's moving around.
It's not building.
It's not building. Yeah, stacking. So I'm stacking the TI stacking reasons.
Yeah.
But
I'm just wondering what that looks like, for example, comparing to my masculine TI.
Legos. Okay, Legos are very, they're not just TI, they're kind of feminine TI. So Legos you can just take apart and like build something different. Like it's not a big deal. It's not like, and I hate, and this is like the feminine sensory as well. So I think, I don't know if I can if I'm separating those very well, but the feminine ST, feminine TI, like the Legos are great because they're never permanent. You're stacking and you can stack and you can build, and it gets really complex, it gets really personal, but it's made to be reformed. Whereas you make something with glue and wood and like all kinds of other things. I don't like messing with any of those materials because I don't want to make something permanent, because I know that it's going to be just deconstructed at some point. You know, I have Legos that I'll build, I'm the kind of person who'll build it and leave it. Or sometimes I'm not. Like I used to be, as a kid, I would build a Lego and then I would take it apart pretty quickly and build something different.
That's very interesting, because then for me with masculine TI would be more like gluing the Lego parts together. So they would be very hard to separate after.
And I guess I could ask you that, like, does it feel like you're building something permanent when you build UTI?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm doing. And still, because I also have feminine NI, so while I am building my understanding, I do know that things aren't as set, they can change. And so sometimes you have to go back and kind of deconstruct and, change a few pieces and build again,
Right.
add some new pieces and so forth.
It's
But
mine's kind of the
yeah,
opposite.
yeah, opposite how then?
Well, because I'm ready and willing to move the blocks around and restructure.
Yeah, it's almost
I'm
fun
talking very
then.
abstractly. I don't actually know a lot about what's happening there, but I know that I'm willing to move my ideas and my reasons around. But the perception, the perception of a pattern or a trajectory,
Yeah.
that feels solid, and which means it has to get very, very abstract. The more, because
Uh-huh.
it needs to be as abstract as possible in order to be solid.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I guess one example of this, how this plays out for me is, I guess this goes into the consume too, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
is when OP came out 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I had spent months and months on MBTI. I wasn't such a big part of my life anymore, but it was something I really consumed.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a very solid perception of the typing system and kind of the whole world as a result, because when you have an NI, it's like I'm using the NI to deal with the SE, to deal with the world. And that's why
Yeah.
type is so powerful to me, because it's like, okay, I have 16 types. Like now I'm going to see, and I'm going to see people. That's a lens, it's a really powerful lens to see people, because it's a comprehensive system. It's not a system of personality disorders. It's like, this is how all people are. All people fit into these types. And so I was like, okay, now I'm seeing the world in this way. And that gets very specific. Like I care about the details. I care about, okay, this is how the grant function stack works, because I'm seeing all those pieces really well. It's like arithmetic to me, like the 16 types.
Yeah.
When they came out with the class and it's like, okay, actually there's jumpers. That was super hard for me for a little while. I knew that I had to process it. I wasn't pushing against it.
No.
Like I'm taking it, I'm like, okay, well, that's their opinion and they're qualified. So, okay, I have to go towards it. But it was painful because
Yeah.
I had to, because that little difference, I don't know if it was the NI or the TI or both, but I had to.
Probably the masculine NI, I think.
Yeah, yeah, it had to, that all that had to change to and consume this new. It's not even that different. It's just more, but it's this new system. It's like, but I think the biggest difference was the jumper. It's like, oh, I really believed that you had to have an introverted and extroverted savior.
Yeah.
It's like, actually, no, you can have two introverted. And it's like,
And
nothing makes sense anymore. Like that's the feeling for just over a little while. But I noticed that.
Yeah. I'm not 100% sure about this, but I think it's been said that Carl Jung never intended that, the functions had to be extroverted and then introverted and, in that order, because he was mainly talking about the first function anyway. So he didn't really talk about like what we.
He didn't make a system of types.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be, it was more like archetypes. Like these are the functions, they exist and
exactly.
they're done. Yeah.
Yeah. So there isn't really a contradiction even to the old school to that. But then again, with you having to change your perception and the whole intuition of it, like the pattern and yeah. And then on top of that, you were a jumper as well. That's kind of ironic.
It is a little bit ironic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I did not know that I was an IJ.
What did you think then, that when you heard that you are a jumper, like first you had to process that there were jumpers and then you got your result back and you were
yeah,
one?
there was a few months in between, so I think it wasn't too bad, but I think the irony is still was not lost on me. Yeah, I mean, it's just silly. It's like, oh, it's like you're a single observer and you can't see that you can't see yourself, in that way. Yeah, I don't think it was the worst. It wasn't the hardest thing in the world, but it was definitely something that I did. I would think that was the hardest thing to process about.
What part was the hardest then, if you want to share? I mean, just if you want.
Oh, about my type, or I mean, like in general. I know. I mean, like I like 2 or 3 months into the class, like I started processing like my religious beliefs and everything, and like that all that changed. That was the hardest thing, at least that year, and probably one of the hardest things in my life too. Like because that's like.
Did that connect to OP somehow? Do you
Oh
you
yeah,
say?
well, and not to like the type specifically, but just more to the the NI of objective versus subjective,
Hmm.
and owning that, what that means, and
Yeah,
how we're all so extremely subjective that,
right.
and understanding in more detail some of the dynamics that come out of that. Like
Mm,
that's the core of it, but there's more details of how that comes out, and like how, just how biases play out for everyone, and
yeah,
that plus like seeing Dave and Shan's their personal journey and how
yeah.
their journey with type kind of moved their religious beliefs as well. I
Mm,
kind of processed the NI of that as well, and like that was a whole, it just
yeah,
became my journey as well. And
yeah,
type itself, the code did not feel like it was a part of it, but the code
yeah.
itself has never felt as impactful
What it
as a
did to
religious belief
your,
changing.
yeah, like your
Yeah, to
personal,
my even deeper personal
yeah.
perceptions of the world, how the world works.
Mm,
Yeah.
wow, that's interesting. I'm moving on here because of the time.
Yes, we've eaten
Yeah,
up a lot of time here.
it feels like we could talk for hours and hours. But I
Great.
want to touch
Yeah.
on the whole visual modality since it's my opposite. I am the audio. So, um, yeah. So if I share what it's like for me, like basically my sister calls me blind person because she thinks that I don't really pay attention to, my environment, I guess. Like even when I'm interacting with people, I don't remember, what they looked like, what clothes they were wearing. Sometimes if it's just like a random, very fast interaction or someone I saw, I don't even remember the skin color or, so many things. Even sometimes I didn't even think of if it was, the gender or anything. It's like I don't see. I use I guess my feeling more when I perceive the world, like how do I feel about things? How do they affect me? Also sounds and the space. I can remember, like if I'm listening to an audiobook and I'm walking and say that because I'm sleep savior, go over the same book later again and re-listen.
Sure.
I will, when I listen to the same sentences, I will know exactly where I was, like in what space I was in, where I was
Can you
walking.
see the space that you're
No,
remembering?
I know where it is. So
You know where it is, but you can't see it.
I
Okay.
can't really see. Okay, yeah, sure. I know it's a road. I know there is a lake, but I don't see the details. I just know the area and the place. And I remember what I was thinking when I listened and
How you
what I,
felt.
yeah, exactly what I felt. You know, it's kind of reliving that same experience that I had the first time I listened to that chapter. So for you as a visual, how does that, is it similar? Is it different? How do you experience your perception of the world?
I think my experience is mostly similar to yours, and I think that's probably characteristic of SE last. It's
Yeah,
just a lot of it is just not taking the world in.
yeah, yeah.
Um, there are some little differences that is more visual for me. So I
Mm,
do the same thing with the audiobook. In fact, I feel like I create a stronger memory in general when I'm listening to something while also doing it. And it's not even that I have to listen back to the same thing again. So I usually don't do that. But if I remember listening to something, I could also go back to it, but if I remember listening to something, then I can also remember the place, and I remember how it looked. I don't remember how it sounded as much. I I
so
can
you
vaguely,
remember like the image, the place
yeah,
where you were. Ah, okay,
I
yeah.
got just pictures. Now they're not very detailed pictures. They're like, you know, they're it's all murky still. And I think a lot of that still is just not taking in a lot. But maybe when you're taking in more, like with the audiobook, there's just like the I'm more engaged with taking in all the senses, maybe.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can remember smells really
Hmm.
well too. Or I not remember smells, but smells will remind me of visuals of memories.
Oh, so
So
you connect, and for me, I will remember more feelings and experiences internally. I don't really remember the visual memory
I will get
connected.
feelings from smells as well. In fact, I
Hmm.
think feelings are I mean, I don't, it seems I've heard that from other people too.
Yeah.
That you can get like a lot of nostalgia from smell. It's like it doesn't have to be the same smell, but it's like the perception of the smell is taking me back to.
Yeah. Right.
That's something I notice a lot. But a lot of it is ignoring the outside world. So I do photography,
Oh.
and
Mm-hmm.
you would think that I wouldn't, but I would still describe myself the same, or the way you were talking about, like, oh, I'm blind.
Yeah.
It's like
The
I'm
intuitives
not.
are blind.
My intuitives
Simple
are
as
blind.
that.
It's like not literally. It's like my vision's great if I'm
Yeah.
looking at something. But the fact is that when I'm looking at something, I'm only seeing one thing, and that's if I'm actually looking. I'm
Yeah.
probably seeing a visual in my head instead, and I'm pasting that over the world. It's not.
But
I
that's
think
still interesting because you're actually seeing a visual in your head, because I don't do that.
Yes, but I think, and I think I'm doing that, and you are not. But if you are not a visual, then I think you might imagine it differently than it is, because, like, for example, I can be visualizing while I'm driving,
Mm-hmm.
and in fact, most of the time I am, and it's
What
not
do you
unsafe.
mean by that? Like, what do you mean
So what
by
I'm trying to say is
visualizing?
that when I'm driving, I'm also doing the visualizing. But that doesn't mean I'm not seeing the road. It doesn't mean I'm not driving well. I'm still responding to everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just not what I'm focusing on. And so it's
No.
just like, it's not like I can't see anymore, but
Yeah. I
I
know.
don't know. I'm not paying attention.
Right.
That
Yeah.
sounds bad. It sounds like I'm not driving well, but what I'm trying to say is
No, no.
it's a
We are
separate,
driving
we are
intuitively.
driving.
Yeah.
I'm driving intuitively, but it means that the visuals are not crystal clear. And
Mm.
they might be more clear if you're a Savior SE. We can ask the Savior SEs to chime in on that. But
Yeah.
I think the visual, because I think the fact is that the modalities are a demon for me.
Yeah.
They're both demon. The functions that are the modalities are demons. So
Interesting. Yeah.
yeah. So it's just, I feel like the modalities aren't being used as much at all. So with photography, what I noticed the most is it kind of works well, actually. I block out almost everything, because when you take a photo, you have to eliminate, you're not, because as a human, you see like 180-degree vision, you
Yeah.
see all this whole scene. But when you take a photo, you have to eliminate most of that. You have to pick something. And the better the photo, the more things you can eliminate, the better the photo usually.
Yeah.
And so my style of photo usually comes out is like, I see just the lines. I just see these abstract points of connection in the geometry of the scene. I see that, and that's like, it's almost a beautiful like explanation of NI. It's like, oh, I just see the line from here to here, or the way these lines intersect. And there's all these details in the scene, and I can't see the details. Other people will tell me about the details in my photos, because I never saw them. That's not what I was paying attention to.
You're seeing the pattern.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm consuming, like, it's still very much a consume play activity, but it's driven by NI. It's driven by seeing the connections and patterns.
You're seeing the patterns, and I am more feeling the patterns, I think.
Yes. I want to get better at photography, and I think that will involve paying more attention to the feeling, especially if it's people, because that's like, okay, seeing people, understanding what's happening with the pose and the facial expression and all that, and then as well as everything else, how that's coming together to produce a certain feeling. What kind of feeling do I want? What's the mood of this photograph? Sometimes it's some people do a really, like, you have like a band cover and so it's really like dark mood. Like, how do you create that? Or it's just a senior portrait. How do you have this like happy, this cool? Yeah, that's something I don't do as much, but I would want to grow more towards.
Wow, that sounds very interesting. Okay, let's see here if I have covered. Yeah, I had another question connected to the visual modality. When you consume, do you gather a lot of visual stuff?
Okay, so this is a good one. I think you would, the question is it like, oh, do you like watching videos? You take in the information visually like that? And it's like, yes, I will do that. But actually, a lot of times my consume is listening to a YouTube video or a podcast, and while I'm doing work or something, energy dominant. I gotta I gotta be clever how I do all my consume and play. But when I listen to something, when I listen to an audiobook or I listen to a YouTube video, I am using visuals. I'm just making my own visuals. I'm not consuming visuals, I'm just building them. And so I'm still using the visuals in my head to do the processing, but it doesn't need to be literal. It doesn't need to be literally taking in that way.
What about movies? When you're consuming movies, how important is it? Like, the scenery, the footage, like the visual
that matters.
stuff.
That does matter a lot to me. I think it comes out the most. Like, I don't like most animated movies or cartoons, whatever. There are some that I like, but I really care about them being really pretty ones. So I'm very selective about those. I prefer live action usually, and I notice when it's pretty. I don't think it's the most important thing in a movie at all, but it always is important to me. It's not even like, oh, it's pretty. It was like pretty enough for me to care about watching the movie. It's more like the visuals are always going to affect me, so I care about what they are. So I don't like a lot of animation. I also don't like, scary or violent movies usually, because the visuals are going to stick with me and they're going to move me. I'm going to get moved. I can't not take in all that I'm consuming. And so
attacking you, the visual image.
The visuals are always attacking me. I don't like, Snapchat, like you have filters. People do filters on their faces and like do things to their faces. I don't like that. It's getting me. It's like I'm too sensitive to that. So I hear the audio as being sensitive to sound. But I feel like I'm the same way, or I'm sensitive to visuals.
With the wrong sounds, it's super annoying.
I don't like things that are distorted, and I don't, and being demon sensory as well. I think like I like a lot of muted colors and tones and scenes, because it's just because it's less overwhelming.
Right, exactly. I am the same with sounds. Like, even when I'm in the Discord, I need to go in and adjust, the voices with the people in the Discord so that they have like an even level of the sound.
Can you do that? Can you adjust the people?
Oh
individually?
Yeah.
What? That's so cool.
Because it's super annoying if someone is loud and
someone else is quiet, especially if I'm in a loud space and I'm listening and I can only hear if they're loud enough, but then someone else is too loud. Or too quiet.
I'm super picky with the audio, and
that's some control I'm gonna start using.
Took a while before. And another tip then, because sometimes I even, I'm going on video telling everyone this, but I have at times muted because maybe I'm not that interested in the topic, and in the beginning, being more FE, I felt bad about, muting the headphone. So I would mute the people instead,
like individual people.
Because then
that only works when it only works if you're not talking though, right?
Well, I can mute myself as well,
Sure. Well, I mean, like if you mute certain people, you can't be talking in the conversation, because what if you talk over them, right?
Right, exactly. And that has happened. That's so funny.
I would see that's the kind of thing that I would, as soon as we're talking about this, like, I'm afraid that's going to happen.
And I'm I don't really care that much. I mean, tribe is movable. I have feminine FE and we are double deciders, and I'm saber.
It's okay if you mess up.
It's very okay. So the thing is, and I can be kind of forgetful. So maybe if the topic wasn't interesting enough, but I still wanted to stay on because maybe they would come back to the one that was interesting, earlier. So I would have to have the sound on so that I will, pick up if it changes. So the people who were talking about the uninteresting topic, I would mute. Then I would have a problem the next time because I would forget to unmute them. It's not anything personal against them, but the wrong topic, because I'm an observer, so I don't have the people problems in that way. But I was kind of just, zoning out from the topic. And then the next time when I returned, I forgot that I had muted them. So I was like, this is so weird, because it sounds like this one person talking in the VC is on a phone call. Like, I can't hear the other person.
You forgot, yeah.
It was so strange. And I was kind of trying to get into the conversation and everything was so weird, And then someone, that was an INTJ, he actually understood that, wait a minute, Alexa, have you muted like someone. So yeah, he used his NI and helped me to realize that, yeah, maybe I need to do it right the next time, because it's, yeah. Anyways, it wasn't a big problem, but yeah, I'm very picky with the audio. That was kind of the point there.
Gotcha. Well, I like that tip. I'm probably gonna, and I got it from an FE, so I'm allowed to do it.
You're absolutely allowed to do it. And it doesn't matter if you mess up, because I'm feminine FE, so I'm also giving your masculine FE permission to mess up.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so see if I have a last question somewhere here. I think we covered most things that I wanted to talk about. But when we were talking about the visual now, before the interview, you showed me, you had a picture. I want to see that one again.
The spectrum of the INFJ. Yeah, I printed this out a while ago as a real nerd. I circled the one, that, doing the camera, circled the one that's me, but that's all 32 INFJs. Yeah. Right.
So you are on the self above tribe side, NITI. Yeah, and I'm on the NIFE side. Can you see where I'm at? If you would point that out.
So you'll be right there. Yes, right there.
Yeah.
Audio, blast, sleep, play.
Yeah.
And then we have Darren Brown would be over here, blast, play, consume, but double feminine. Yeah.
Cool. So we're all a bit on a spectrum as well. So there aren't any typical INFJs anymore. There are no stereotypes. We need to kind of break loose from that old piece of information. It's not valid anymore.
I think when you bring this up to people, it's like, oh, there's a spectrum. Like that's the idea of a spectrum of any kind of type is, I think, something that people even outside OP are starting to process more. And so when you tell us, oh, there's like a spectrum of INFJs, they're like, I think it clicks with a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like, oh, because I know that this person's an INFJ and this person's an INFJ, and maybe they are, maybe they're not, but like, I think it makes sense to a lot of people. So it's cool.
And in the end, I think maybe we would all benefit from just leaving these old, etiquettes. So instead of INFJ, just NIFE, NITI, because that's so much more accurate.
It is. I don't know if it's FE enough for everyone, but I think you're right. The letters don't make sense when you have the spectrum anymore. The letters are tied to 16 types.
Yeah, and the old knowledge, the old stereotypes, the anecdotes, and all of that. So
we're in the information age now. We have to be precise about these things.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Zach, for coming in to my channel. And do you have any final thoughts, like something you want to share? Do you have a YouTube channel or something else that you want to promote, something you're doing?
I do have a YouTube channel to practice my blast, and I have a more public YouTube channel with some of my photography and filmmaking work and other things. I'll send you those links so they can be in the description.
Yes, below.
So we'll do that. Maybe I have some other social media, so we can include that.
Yeah.
Yeah, this has been a really, really fun discussion.
Really fun. Yeah. Oh yeah, I forgot one last question.
Yeah.
The beta quadra. Sometimes I call them, or us, the music quadra. It seems like there are a lot of musicians in this quadra. I guess there are in every quadra, but in terms of the people we have typed in class, like Billie Eilish, Snoop Dogg, for example, there are more examples as well. Eminem. And I'm just thinking, because you mentioned the piano before, like, would you count yourself as a music person? I guess.
Not quite. I could see, like, I think it's one of those. It's like one of those possible paths. If you like take the NE of it, it's like, well, I could have gone this direction. I could have been, I turned out to be a photographer instead of a music person.
But you could choose between the two. Like you had both.
I can see that I could have gone another direction. So I, by chance, not really a musician. It was not something I was brought up on either.
Yeah, right.
But it's interesting. Yeah.
Cool. Do you make your own songs as well?
No. I just play. I find covers that I really like.
Yeah.
And it's like, I want to play it. I've heard that. I really like it. I want to also play it because there's something about playing something that sounds really good too.
Yeah. Do you like singing?
No, but it's something I'd like to learn at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just collecting patterns, creating new anecdotes that we can trash later on in the future. So it's quite unnecessary. But yeah, like one very slight pattern that I'm seeing is that the audio beta seem to be interested in creating the music, while maybe if you are not audio, you will be more interested in, yeah, like you said, making a cover, you know.
Sure.
So yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Awesome. Okay, I'll put your links in the description, and maybe when I have round 2, and I have done a lot of interviews, if you want to, you're welcome back. I'm thinking of making like a second round of beta talks in the future, if I'm still around and all of that, you know. You never know, feminine and
Yeah.
I. Yeah.
Right. Go over the information a little bit more. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm also hoping to be able to make more, you know, like more quadras, expand my information to the alpha quadra and the other quadras as well in time. So I will probably ask you to come on again if you want to.
Well, I would love to talk to you again. Yeah.
Okay.
This is great.
Okay, awesome. Thank
Thanks
you.
for having me on.
Okay, bye.